Actually, there was one moment where she really seemed to, well, basically lose it. Have a look at this.
Talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the president of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it.
What did you make of that? I thought that was a pretty strange flex, talking about putting people in jail when, you know, one of Trump's chief strategists is behind bars right now.
Well, again, she's lying. That's not actually what Donald Trump said. And Bret Baier was trying to point to that. So, again, she was using this as a time to gaslight the American people, continuously lie about Donald Trump. She brought his name up 20 times during this interview instead of talking about herself and how she could make your life better. And what Donald Trump actually said, if you look at the video, he was talking about what would happen after the election if there was mass protest and rioting going on. He was saying that those people would have to face the law. He didn't say which side. He didn't say, oh, we're going to go after Kamala Harris supporters. That's just not true. But this is what always happens to Donald Trump. The media and the left take him out of context, and then they write these headlines, and then they regurgitate the talking points on the mainstream media, and they just hope that people aren't, smart enough to look into it for themselves instead of just believing what is being said.
And what do you think about this with her broader media strategy? Because it's like, you know, they hid her away for so long, and now she's doing everything. She's even doing Fox News. She's done the really raunchy sex podcast, Call Her Daddy. Is this desperation, or is there a method to all of this?
You get a sense that there's a little desperation in the air, that things aren't going as well as they had hoped, that their internal polling must be pretty bad if they feel like they had to bring her out, because initially the strategy was just to keep her in the basement and not have her talk at all, and just hope that all the hype would be enough to get her across the finish line. Then they saw the polling and then realized that, you know, they needed a little bit more of a bump, because Donald Trump is doing significantly well, especially considering everything this man has been through. He's been impeached, all the legal lawfare against him, the assassination attempts on his life, and the mainstream media, which is very much against him for the most part. So he's had a very uphill battle, if you will. And Harris, I mean, she's had everything handed to her on a platter. Not one single voter actually voted for her. She's the most unvetted candidate in recent time. I mean, it's insanity. So, I think the polling's not going where they want it to go, which is why we saw this media blitz over the past 2 weeks. And the expectation that this was going to help her is a little ludicrous, because they thought it was going to help her, and then actually it's not helping at all. We haven't seen a spike in the polls. And in fact, it might be backfiring, because, again, Harris lacks substance, and it's either by design or she just doesn't have what it takes to be the next president of the United States.
Yeah, I suspect it's the latter there, Stephanie, but just sticking on the media, you know, some of the press seems to keep getting into trouble trying to give her a lift. CBS still hasn't released the transcript from that 60 Minutes episode, which we talked about last week on this program, where they seem to give her a whole different answer to make her sound better. And now Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, he has accused CNN, or CBS rather, of selectively editing an answer about hurricane relief in North Carolina. It seems to me like there's a systemic problem with some parts of the press, not just, you know, having their own biases, but actually really actively trying to put their finger on the scale.
I am young enough to remember when CBS was a credible news organization. In fact, I worked for one of their affiliates. That was my first job as a TV news reporter in Yuma, Arizona. And I really looked up to the national host. What is happening right now is proving to be that this news organization is more like a propaganda machine and an arm of the Democratic Party. And the fact that they won't release the transcripts is so revealing. It's either they did a bad and unethical job with the interview, or that Harris completely fell flat on her face and they were trying to boost her, or maybe both. But this could all be resolved if they just release the transcripts, which is not, out of the ordinary. That's what news networks do when they have sit-down interviews with important political people. And this is the person who could potentially be leading our country You know what I mean? It's not, this isn't something that should be private.